So as you all know, I'm just a guy. I'm literally just a guy. I'm just a dude, bro, with a YouTube channel. Nothing that I say means anything. All of it is opinion, none of it is fact. I am not learned in any way on any of the topics that I choose to speak about. I just love the sound of my own voice and I love sharing my opinion. I also love hearing other people's opinions, hint, hint. So that stands for like every video that I make, but I especially want to like preface what I'm gonna say today with that little disclaimer because I honestly have no idea what is about to come out of my mouth. I've just got some thoughts, some feminist thoughts, and I want to share them with you today because I don't have anybody else to share them with. So I think kind of what I'm going to be talking about today is pop feminism, which from what I understand is like, when big companies make a big deal out of making rainbow merch during Pride Month and then they just drop it after the month is over, and it's really plausible that they probably don't actually care about LGBT people and they just want to make a profit off them. Pop feminism is a bit like that, where it's performative feminism for the sake of getting the girls on side without actually saying anything of any merit or taking any feminist action. It's a little bit like when a sci-fi movie has like an alien invasion and then the aliens are just defeated by the power of like human love or respect for each other or some shit, like a fuck yeah humanity storyline, and it just feels like a bit of a cop out. Pop feminism, I think we can all agree, is like viewed as this bad thing because there's no heart and soul. I should maybe give an example. Like the first one that comes to mind is obviously like She-Hulk, which was a few years ago now, but I remember everybody kicking off about that because they said that it was going to be this big feminist thing and then it turned out to be a massive disappointment. Never watched it myself, but that got accused of being pop feminism, so that's the kind of vibe that we're chilling with today. So you've got stuff like that that's considered pop feminism, but then what would be considered like a real feminist film, right? Or a real feminist piece of visual media? Because I could name some feminist books for real, but feminist films, feminist TV shows, can you tell me about them? What is held up as the standard here? For me, I've always considered a few films feminist films simply because they give me that feeling of sisterhood, right, with the characters and with other people who relate to the film. And so I end up coming out with films like, maybe a lot of people would say Thelma and Louise, I think, but I'm thinking more like Jennifer's Body. Big feminist media that I like to argue for is the film Superbad or the series Two and a Half Men, but maybe we'll get into that another time because I feel like those are hot takes. My point, I think, is that it's dubious what exactly makes a feminist film. And the films specifically that I'm going to be talking about today are films that gave me that, what I like to just call that feminist feeling, TFF, trademark. When I went on to do some research and look into reviews and stuff about the film, I found that like the community is in uproar because these films touted themselves as feminist masterpieces and the masses are disappointed. We're talking about Last Night in Soho and Don't Worry Darling. We're going to be talking about why people expected these to be feminist films, why people were disappointed that these maybe weren't so feminist, and then we're going to talk about my opinions and what makes a feminist film in general, okay? And like I said, I have no idea what I'm talking about, so if anybody else wants to weigh in and give some opinions, I would love that. These like Feminist Friday videos that I do have always just been an opportunity for me to spew my socio-political thoughts into the void in order to maybe like kind of start a discussion, I guess, or like start my brain working and like get my thoughts down. So don't expect anything intellectual to come out of this or even anything that particularly makes sense, but let's just go on this journey together. We are going to start talking about Last Night in Soho because this is my personal favourite of the two. I should probably preface it by saying that I am a massive Edgar Wright fangirl, and so I am probably a little bit biased in that respect, but I'm going to try and take a step back and think about this from an unbiased perspective. So I hope you can all appreciate that massive sacrifice that I am making. I'm not going to recap the entire plot of Last Night in Soho for you because the entire plot is not relevant to what we're going to be talking about here today. So here is a synopsis with all of the relevant information that you need to know. Ellie is a girl who moves from the countryside to London for university to do fashion, and she doesn't fit in with any of the other girls. She's a little bit odd and she's also psychic. She can see ghosts. So she doesn't fit in. She doesn't want to fit in. She ends up moving out of the dorm and into this old apartment, which is over the top of this old lady. She has visions of this girl who she thinks died in her room called Sandy, who used to be a singer, and she gets obsessed with Sandy and she kind of relates to Sandy really hard, gets entrenched in solving Sandy's murder. But it actually turns out in the end, spoiler alert guys, Sandy kind of got tricked into being a sex worker for this guy who said he was going to make her a big star, went insane basically and started killing all the guys who were coming back to her apartments. And the vision of this girl that Ellie was seeing was actually the vision of the girl that Sandy used to be, and the girl that Sandy wanted to be before her life got absolutely fucked up by this man. And then it turns out that Sandy's actually still alive and she's the old woman who rented out the apartment. She tries to kill Ellie and dies in a fiery blaze of glory. And it's awesome. It's a good film. My initial reaction to this film, I went to watch it in the cinema and I absolutely loved it. And I did consider it a feminist film because it did give me that feminist feeling, this incredible feeling of sisterhood at the end of the movie that I really appreciated. And so it confused me when I re-watched the film recently, and then I went to watch some reviews of it, and I found out that people were like criticizing Edgar Wright. How dare they? No, they were criticizing him because apparently he set out to make this big feminist film and they feel like he really was lacking in that respect. And I just disagree. The actual intent that Wright put forward about this film was that he'd received criticism in the past for not writing strong female characters, and he set out making this movie with the intent of making a strong female character, making some strong female characters that weren't just like a basic love interest or like one note or whatever. I don't necessarily think that Edgar Wright came out and said, I'm gonna make a feminist movie, but that's kind of the way that everybody took it, just from him saying that he was gonna have strong female characters, which the two are not they're not the same thing. We are still going to view this as if Edgar Wright boldly announced that he was going to make the best feminist film of the decade and see if he succeeded. I think the best way that I can come at this one is if I talk about the criticisms of the film and kind of give my counterpoints to them. The number one criticism that I saw was that this film apparently frames sex trafficking as a thing of the past. Ellie sees that Sandy was tricked into doing these sexual favors for these men, and it's kind of a moral lesson for her. She kind of idolized Sandy and got lost in her world and finds out over the course of the film that it's not so glamorous as she believed. So everybody acts like Ellie should be really grateful because sex trafficking was this horrible thing that used to happen to girls and it doesn't happen anymore. And of course we all know that that's explicitly not true. I really don't think that it is framed as a thing of the past. I think just because Ellie doesn't necessarily come across an actual sex worker in the present day doesn't mean that that's the implication, right? Because Ellie does have encounters with a lot of shitty guys. We see that girls are still suffering in a lot of ways, maybe not that specific way, but in a lot of similar ways. In her present day experience, she has like the pervy taxi driver and even the cop who used to try and help the girls who were in the sex trafficking business. He's got this like weird attitude towards them where he doesn't actually care about them. It's almost like he only helps them out for the clout. They'll be like grateful to him and maybe do him some favors as well. So even the good guys aren't good guys in Ellie's presence. And of course it can't be denied that Sandy is literally still alive and living downstairs, living with the torture of having lived that life and having had to give up her body to all of these random men, feeling like she had to do that. To say that it's framed as a thing of the past when the person that it happened to is literally still alive and breathing in the film is crazy, in my opinion. The real moral of the story is obviously about romanticizing the past. Ellie learns that the past was not so glamorous because obviously Sandy, the person that she thought was so sexy and confident and everything that she could never be, ended up in this horrible situation. It makes Ellie less naive, but also more confident in herself and stuff by emulating Sandy. People doing these critical reviews of this film, they said that it's not girls who need to hear this. Girls don't need reminding of the horrible things that are happening to girls, whether in the present or the past. I think that girls are perfectly aware of this fact, of these events, right? And so the implication here, I think, is that it's boys that need to learn about this. And so maybe the main character should have been a boy, is the conclusion that I'm coming to here, and it should have been a boy that learned this lesson, so that maybe like boys could watch it and relate to the main character, and then they would like by proxy learn the lesson. I think that it absolutely would have been a travesty if the main character of this film had been a boy. I think that having Ellie as the protagonist, having a female protagonist, allows us to see Sandy as a girl first and a killer second, even though that is part of the mystery and we don't find out until later in the narrative. I feel like having Ellie be so related to Sandy, so idolize her, so see the good in her, right? It would have been hard to have a boy do that in such a believable way. It's something that could have been done, I'm sure. And I'm sure that a lot of boys would idolize Sandy. His entire point of making this film anyway was that he wanted to make strong female characters, and so that I think having his lead be a boy would have really defeated that purpose also. Ellie really hard relates to Sandy and she sees herself in her because Sandy arrived in London and she didn't have anywhere to go and she kind of had to make a name for herself in like an artistic profession, singing as opposed to fashion. Having Ellie relate to her so hard allows us to understand Sandy's perspective when she starts killing off these guys, right? And I think that because Ellie sees herself and sees the good in Sandy so hard, that allows us as the viewer seeing things through Ellie's eyes to also see the good in Sandy. And it shouldn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl in order to do that, because Edgar Wright's a good filmmaker who can really put us in the shoes of his characters, I think. Ellie ultimately forgives Sandy for killing all of these men. I don't think it was ever even a question in her mind. She understands entirely why Sandy lost herself the way that she did and why she felt like she had to exact her revenge on these men. But it's not just Ellie who forgives Sandy, it's the narrative. There's never a moment where she's not viewed as a sympathetic character and she becomes a monster. Even when she's trying to kill our protagonist, the protagonist is trying to like just stop her and save her and get her out of this burning building. Ultimately, she's kind of the one who decides to stay and like accept her fate and take the justice for what she has done, I guess. She does kind of accept her justice in that way, so like atone for the sins that was killing all of these men. Narratively speaking, she is forgiven. Again, it doesn't really matter that the main protagonist is a male or a female because the overarching message of the film is one of forgiveness for Sandy. And if you are really, really bothered about boys being the one to learn this message about not romanticizing the past and about all of the horrible things that have happened and are happening to girls, it's an Edgar Wright movie, mate. I assure you, many boys saw it, okay? The film bros were coming out in droves to watch this one, okay, bro? You don't have to worry about it. They saw it. Whether they enjoyed it or not, that's on them, okay? But they definitely saw it. I absolutely love the shot at the end of the movie when Sandy's dead and Ellie has done her fashion show and she's like grown up and got some confidence in herself and blah, blah, blah. And she looks over and sees Sandy for the last time in the mirror, and it's Sandy as a confident, gorgeous singer self and not the person that she got broken down into over the course of Ellie's visions. It's this final nail in the coffin of the fact that the narrative really does forgive Sandy because she, even in her afterlife, gets to exist as her happy self and she's not suffering for the crimes that she committed, right? Like justice has been done in her death and she's like absolved of it through that. And she gets to be happy in a way. It's like bittersweet. And I love that. And I think that that's indicative of the entire point that I'm trying to make here, right? So some people think that Sandy is bad survivor representation because obviously she deals with her trauma by going out and killing people, which is not a great response, admittedly. Edgar Wright is out here trying to make a specific type of film, okay? The whole point is that it's a fucking murder mystery. She had to be out here killing people, bro. I don't think he's trying to say that everybody who goes through something like this is going to do that with this film. I think that to boil representation down to one film is so dumb anyway. You can't boil representation down to one film because representation means like as a whole. Like I said, even though she does obviously go out and kill people, it's not even explicitly viewed as like a bad thing within the narrative. If anything, it's massively good survivor representation because it's like, I don't care what you do, you get your revenge on those men, girl, good for you. I don't get it. Usually people love a good for her movie. And do you know what? Is this because it was made by a man? Is this why we hate it? It's okay to say yes. It's okay. You can let me in on the secret. I'll hate it as well. No, I am kidding. Edgar, I'd never hate you, baby. I think that Sandy's a great character. I think that you perfectly understand why her character goes to where it goes. She gets the redemption that she needs in the narrative and she gets a happy ending. I don't personally see how that's bad survivor representation. If a survivor is personally offended by this, it's not my place to tell them they can't be. Okay, but me personally, I don't see it. So to bring it back around for Last Night in Soho, did Edgar Wright make a good feminist film? I think probably, like, you can tell, I think he did. I think that he made a film with two really good, really strong female characters who are both likable in different ways. They're like diverse. I don't think that the film has got anything particularly political to say, but I don't necessarily think that it's on filmmakers to always have to say something political in their movies for them to be of merit in a certain space. At the end of the day, all Wright set out to do with this film was to make good female characters, and I felt like he really did succeed with that. But as far as the criticism goes of him not making a very good feminist film here, I really think that we should look again. I really feel like I don't see like the love for this film that I see for a lot of other films in the same kind of sphere. I really think that it deserves some love and affection and care, okay? Anyway, I am going to stop talking about Last Night in Soho because we still have another film to talk about, and that is Don't Worry Darling. I'm not as passionate about Don't Worry Darling as I am about Soho. I'm not familiar with the director, but I do really love Florence Pugh. I think that she's an amazing actress, and obviously, you know me, I love One Direction. I'm gonna be out here supporting Harry Styles and all that he does. If you would like a disclaimer, I feel like I'm a lot less biased about this film, and so I feel like me and you, we can have a lot more of an open discussion about this one without me haranguing you about Edgar Wright. So I'm gonna come out and immediately spoil the end of Don't Worry Darling, because the discussion that I want to have today is a lot more about the conversations surrounding the film and the implications of the twist at the end, rather than the events of the film itself. Florence Pugh's character Alice is running around in this like 1950s idyllic suburbia. At the end, she finds out that her boyfriend has actually like put her into a permanent VR machine in order to kind of trap her into being his housewife forever. And it's not even the 1950s. I really enjoyed this film. It's visually stunning, and I think that it allows for a lot of conversation that people didn't give it credit for. So when Alice's boyfriend is revealed to be this big creep at the end, he got like indoctrinated into this system. It's called like the Victory Project or something. He found it through this guy who essentially has a podcast and is like this Jordan Peterson type dude. Convinced her boyfriend that he should be the man of the house, and in order to do that, he has to work for this Jordan Peterson guy in the real world while he keeps Alice and himself inside the perpetual VR. People meaning the incels, okay, think that women would be happier if we would go back to being housewives. They think that we were happier before women's liberation, and that it's scientifically proven, okay, that we were happier before women's liberation, because we didn't have as much to worry about, bro. We didn't know as much about what was going on in the world because we were essentially children kept at home by our husbands, okay? Now that we have more things to worry about, obviously we're more unhappy, but we're more free. And I feel like this essential point is what the film like means to me and what I feel like it was trying to say. Alice is a modern woman thrown into the life of being a 1950s housewife. She has no idea the fact that she's a modern woman, and so according to incel logic, she should enjoy herself and she should be happy and content, but she's not, and she knows that something's wrong, okay? And even when she is given the choice to stay, knowing everything that's going on and knowing that she can be happy here and that she doesn't have to worry about anything, she chooses not to. She wants to go back to working fucking like 12-hour shifts at the hospital or something like that, because that's her life, okay? The thing that annoys me about this one, Last Night in Soho is a good for her movie that people don't appreciate, even though we love good for her movies in this house. And I feel like Don't Worry Darling is just the Barbie movie that everybody went insane for. But we start the film in the middle of the part of the Barbie movie where the Kens have taken over and all the Barbies are brainwashed and having fun, being cute little housewives and not having to worry about anything, right? Obviously, with a film like this, where it concentrates a lot on the simulation and doesn't give us a lot of context for what happens outside of it, people are always going to be disappointed for what could have been. But we have to, so one thing that I have learned is that when you are presented with a piece of media, you can't hold it to like your expectations of what you would have done with the prompt or the premise or whatever. So this is the movie that we got. One of the things that made making this distinction especially hard when it comes to this film is that we got a look at some of the scripts from before it was revised, and a lot of people liked the original character of Alice's boyfriend, whose name I can't remember, to be honest, so I'm just going to call him Harry from now on. They liked his characterization better in the old scripts than in the new scripts, and they felt like his character was softened because they didn't want to make Harry Styles into an angry guy and ruin his reputation. Well, I do see that there would have been a lot of merit in having Harry be a mean boyfriend or like in one of the scripts, having him actually turn out to not be her boyfriend at all in the real world and just be a random guy who'd like selected her for his wife in this simulation. But I like Soft Harry. Soft Harry opens up a lot more discussion. Something about Soft Harry in this movie, it made me think a lot about like how men suffer just as much as women under the patriarchy, okay? Oh god. Oh, here I go. Men's redefined worth in the modern world that's like separate from women has left them floundering, bro. Like, they rely on us for validation just as much as we're taught to rely on them. And because women are more independent and more masculine nowadays, men don't know what to fucking do with themselves. If I can't like earn a lot of money and have women like respect and want me for that, then what the fuck am I supposed to do? Okay, and it's such a simplistic caveman mindset, but can we blame them? When those people, these men, these ridiculous men with podcasts who were just touting the old ways and saying, remember how good it was when men had a purpose in life? And men are like, yeah, that sounds like it was pretty good, even though they weren't there and they didn't live through that and they don't know how it really was. And so we come back to this theme of romanticizing the past. And so, in a way, although Alice is the main character, this film does explore through Harry's character what people wanted from Last Night in Soho in having men learn this lesson about not romanticizing the past, right? Because Harry does die in the end. That scene of Harry dancing for the Jordan Peterson guy. He keeps encouraging him to dance and dance and dance, even though he's clearly knackered, and it's like kind of embarrassing. And it shows that Harry is just as much this guy's puppet, the patriarchy's puppet, as Alice is. And I just feel like it works better in these moments that we feel sorry for him in a way, or even just like feel pity for him that he's this guy who couldn't handle the fact that his girlfriend was earning more money than him, and so he had to do this crazy ridiculous thing in order to get back some semblance of self-worth. He's a sad guy. Concerning the script where it turned out that he was just a random dude, he'd just chosen Alice to be his wife in this simulation because she was like some random girl in his building or something. Like, that would have been a really good twist, and I can appreciate the discussion that would have happened there. I feel like it is more effective that he was her boyfriend in real life and he would do this to her, this mad disrespect and this betrayal, because we all know the statistics, girl. 99% of the time when something bad happens to you in life, it's because of a man that you know and not a random man, unfortunately. So I just feel like that was more realistic and it opens a lot more relevant discussion in the real world. So I personally like that change. So is Don't Worry Darling a good feminist film? I feel like this one was touted as having this big political feminist message. Maybe it didn't deliver as much as the hype merited and made people think it was going to, but I do think that it's still a really, really good film. I think that it does have things to say. I think that a really big issue of this one is that people wanted to see outside of the simulation more than they wanted to spend 2 hours inside of it. But that's just not the film that was being made here. So both of these films have been accused of being style over substance and not really having much to say and more being about the flashy visuals than the political ideals, okay? And like I said before, I don't think it's on filmmakers to force politics into their movies all the time. I feel like people wanted these films to have more to say than they did. So in a way, these films are in fact being accused of being pop feminism. Oh yeah, we're bringing it back to the beginning, fellas. I think that films, okay, yeah, are made to open a discussion. It's art. It's not something that's supposed to be concrete and defined. It's not a propaganda movie, mate. Both of these films have opened up discussion. In fact, Don't Worry Darling opened up so much discussion, it was unreal. It was all over the internet for so long. So if that is the purpose of a film in general, then I think that they both passed with flying colours. Based on public reaction, I really just don't know what makes a feminist film yet. I really haven't come to any conclusions about that. But I have come to some earth-shattering conclusions about some philosophical shit, if you want to hear about that. I think that me even making this video, first of all, could be considered pop feminism, because it's like, I'm sat down here and I'm like, ooh, Feminist Friday video, girls, let's talk about deep topics. And then I've literally just talked about 2 films and actually gushed over a man, if you count fangirling over Edgar Wright as that kind of thing, which I definitely do. I'm not out here trying to say that I'm saying anything deep by talking about these films, but it's like, then why do the films have to be deep, bro? My understanding of pop feminism, which, you know, admittedly isn't very deep, is that it has no soul. There's no meaning behind it. It's just like virtue signaling almost. And I feel like the one thing that you can't say about these films is that there isn't passion behind them, and that the people making the films didn't believe in those films and believe that they were doing a good thing and trying to spread a good message. And so can they really be accused of being pop feminism at the end of the day if there was passion and soul behind it? Obviously, it is important to take action and to do things that are going to make a difference for feminism, especially nowadays when I feel like we've taken a massive step backwards as far as that's concerned. But my takeaway from all of this thinking that I have done is that all feminism is important, including things that you might think are like bottom of the barrel and have no merit. I really think that like just girls getting together in a safe space and having a good time is considered good feminism for me and a win for feminists everywhere. I think that to put a film down because it doesn't necessarily have this big political agenda is kind of mean, to put it lightly. And I also think it's very masculine of us as a society to say that. A society? Why did I say it like the Joker? Oh, get away from me. I think I can't come back from that and say this. That was such, oh. Okay, listen, I think that it is very masculine of us as a society to say that all of our feminist endeavors should involve action. I think that as women, we should acknowledge that introspection is also important. Taking the time to think about things, to get in our feelings about it. And what better way to do that than through some art? I'm from the Joker, so like really pretentious. And I feel like I've been thinking about these things since I watched these films and saw the reviews for them. And I feel like I really just needed to get all these things off my chest. Honestly, like, these are just my opinions. And I really do just want to kind of like try to open up a discussion with anybody who might be watching this, long as it has been. If you have opinions on these films, especially if they are contrary to my own, I would love to hear them. I just want to sit in a safe space with the girls and have a good time talking to you about some films. So thanks for listening if you have. And I will catch you on the next one. Peace.